There was one chair left at the end of the table. Not for me, but I sat there anyway, far from the centre, far from the laughter, far from the side of the family that actually shared blood. My stepsister had already opened her gifts, the house, the car, the jewellery passed down from our grandmother. She smiled like someone who'd won a competition she never admitted we were in. I just sipped water, didn't ask about the will, didn't ask why I was even invited. I assumed they needed my signature to close some formality. Then the lawyer cleared his throat. There's one more document. A sealed envelope, requested to be read last. He pulled it out gently, like it might crumble. It had a name on it. Not our last name, mine. My stepsister blinked. My stepmother scoffed. Someone muttered, probably a thank you note. But I knew that handwriting, that slight rightward tilt. That was his. And that envelope wasn't a courtesy. It was a message. One he never had the courage to say aloud. I looked down at my glass. The water trembled slightly. I wasn't afraid of what he left me. I was afraid of remembering who I used to be to him, before everything changed. The lawyer looked up. Would you like me to read it? I nodded, because even if I wasn't family at that table, this time he had written only to me, and I needed to hear it. At every family dinner, there was a seat they never told me not to take, but no one ever made room for it either. It was the chair at the far end of the table, just close enough to hear the jokes, but too far to be part of the laughter. Too far to be asked if I wanted more mashed potatoes. Too far for anyone to notice when I stopped asking for anything at all. That's where I sat the first time my dad introduced her, the woman who became my stepmother, and beside her, the girl with the perfect braid and practiced smile, my stepsister. They sat like they'd always belonged there, and maybe they did. Dad said, "This is our family now." He looked at her when he said it, not at me. I didn't argue, didn't ask what I was then. Just nodded, like a guest who didn't want to be rude. From that day on, I became very good at vanishing into that chair. When my stepsister got into ballet school, we threw a party. When I made honour roll, I told my mum quietly, after dinner, when the dishwasher was running. There was no cake for that, no toast. Just a soft pat on my head and a, "Good job, sweetie," from her, not him. I used to think if I worked harder, they'd move my chair closer. But I learned quickly, some seats were never meant to be offered, only tolerated. And the thing about being tolerated is that it teaches you how to disappear in plain sight. When Mum died, they let me stay in her room one last night. I remember curling up with her old sweater. It still smelled like vanilla and pen ink. Before I left, I took the fountain pen she always used, not to steal, just to hold something no one could take. No one noticed, just like no one noticed when I slipped out the back door that next morning, quiet. Like a placeholder no one needed anymore. It didn't happen all at once. I didn't wake up one morning and realise I wasn't part of the picture. It happened slowly, quietly, like when I stopped being listed on the family vacation emails, or when my stepmom accidentally left me off the school pickup list. Small things, paper cuts, nothing you could point to without sounding dramatic. When my stepsister had her dance recital, she got a new dress, flowers, and a dinner afterward. When I won a science fair, they sent a thumbs up emoji in the family group chat. No one came. I learned not to expect fanfare. I learned to shrink the size of my good news so no one would feel inconvenienced by it. I started eating in my room. I stopped calling out, "I'm home," when I walked through the door. Nobody noticed the silence. They were used to it by then, but I still had my mum's letters. After she passed, I found them in a worn shoebox in the back of her closet. Old envelopes with postmarks from cities we never got to visit. She had written them for future me. Some marked, "Open at 16." Others, "When you fall in love." And one, No label at all. I never opened that one. I kept them all hidden, like treasure. Because in a house full of people who only saw what I lacked, those letters reminded me that once I was someone's everything. I remember once my stepmom found me rereading one of the letters. She said, "You really should move on. That kind of attachment isn't healthy." Then she turned back to decorating the Christmas tree. Only 2 stockings hung on the mantel. I wanted to ask why mine wasn't there, but I didn't, because I already knew, and honestly, she probably thought I had one somewhere else. So I went upstairs, placed the unopened letter in a metal box, and taped the pen my mother left me to the lid. If they wouldn't remember me in their traditions, I would build new ones of my own, even if no one else ever saw them. The last time I saw my father alive, he didn't expect me. He was in the hospital, bed thinner than I remembered, his face more bone than warmth. The room smelled like antiseptic and old grief. When I walked in, my stepsister was already there, laughing softly with one of the nurses. She looked up at me like I was a calendar date she forgot to cross out. I didn't say anything, just stood at the door, waiting to be acknowledged. He turned his head slightly, took a second, then said, "She's still here." Not angry, not welcoming, just surprised. Like I hadn't left already. I walked in slowly, stopping a foot short of his bed. His hands were resting over the blanket, still as paper. I had brought nothing. No flowers, no balloons, just the pen. The one Mom used every Sunday to write letters to no one but me. I took it from my coat pocket and laid it gently in his open palm. He didn't close his fingers, just stared at it, then back at me. "I forgot you had that," he said. I nodded. There was nothing else to say. No final speech, no last "I love you" to break open the silence. "I should go," I said quietly. He blinked. "Okay." And that was it. My stepsister didn't follow me into the hallway. The nurse gave me a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, and when the elevator doors closed behind me, I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't hurt, but because that moment was already gone before I even stepped into it. Outside the hospital, I sat on a bench in the cold, pulled out the one letter my mother had left unlabeled, still unopened. I held it against my chest, but I wasn't ready yet. Not because I feared what it said, but because I feared it might be the only thing in my life that ever said exactly what I needed to hear. I didn't pack much, just one small bag, the metal box with Mom's letters, and the coat I wore when I left. The house looked exactly the same blue siding, slightly faded, same rose bushes, overgrown and reaching in all directions. Even the welcome mat was still crooked. I stood on the porch for a moment, key in my hand, wondering if they'd already changed the locks, wondering if I even wanted to go in. Then the door creaked open, not by me, by her, my stepmother. She looked tired, not unkind, just worn. "Oh," she said. "You came?" I nodded. "I thought the lawyer said I should." She didn't argue, just stepped aside. The smell hit me first. Dust, old wood, and something faintly floral, like a home trying to remember what comfort used to feel like. I walked in slowly. Nothing was packed yet. Not the photos, not the china, not the memories. "Your room's still upstairs," she said, "if you want it." "I'll sleep on the couch," I replied. She didn't push. Later that evening, I sat by the fireplace, watching the flames flicker over the same carpet I once spilled juice on. No one yelled at me that day, just cleaned it up, quiet. That was always the way here. The silence wasn't cruel, just permanent. I held the unopened letter again, still sealed, still heavy. Outside, I heard the neighbour's screen door slam. Mrs. Daniels. She used to babysit me when Mum had night shifts. She once said I had a sad girl's eyes. She waved from across the yard. I didn't wave back, because I wasn't the girl she remembered. I wasn't sure who I was at all, but I was here. Not to reclaim anything, just to see what remained. We moved around each other like ghosts. Same rooms, same routines, but different worlds. She made tea every morning at 7:30, chamomile, poured into the same cup Dad used. She never asked if I wanted some. I always woke up earlier just to avoid the small talk neither of us knew how to have. The television stayed off. The radio played classical music low, forgettable. Like background noise to keep the silence from echoing too loud, I stayed on the couch, didn't touch anything, didn't look through old drawers or photo albums, just counted the days until the reading of the will. But on the third day, she surprised me. "I kept some of your mother's books," she said from the hallway. "I didn't know if you'd want them." I looked up. She wasn't looking at me, just at the floor, like the words had escaped before she could pull them back. "Thank you," I said. Not sure if I meant it yet. That night, I opened the box she left outside my door. Inside were 5 books, all dog-eared. Pages folded where my mum used to leave notes. One still had a receipt tucked inside, from the day they moved into this house together, a coffee shop I hadn't seen in years. I stared at it longer than I meant to, not because of the memory, but because it was proof she had kept something. I wondered if it was guilt or care. Sometimes they look the same. The next morning, I made tea before she did, left a second cup on the counter, didn't say anything. When I came back an hour later, both cups were still there, untouched, cold. By the end of the week, the house wasn't quiet anymore. Relatives started showing up. Some I hadn't seen since the funeral. Some I barely remembered from Christmases long past. They came with flowers, with casseroles, with pity disguised as cheerfulness. My stepsister arrived last, hair perfect, makeup flawless, walking in like she owned the place. And maybe she did. She gave me a polite hug, the kind you give to someone you once borrowed notes from in high school. "You look rested," she said. I gave her a smile that meant nothing. We were no longer rivals. We were barely acquaintances. But I noticed how people gravitated toward her, how they asked how her business was doing, how proud Dad would have been, how poised she seemed. No one asked what I'd been up to. No one noticed I hadn't spoken much. I was background again, just like at the family dinners, just like that empty chair at the end of the table. That night, I overheard her in the kitchen. "She hasn't even opened Mum's old room," she whispered to an aunt. "I don't think she's ready for all this responsibility." I clenched my fist, not because she was wrong, but because she said it like she'd earned the right to judge me. Like I hadn't lived my whole life watching her collect things I wasn't allowed to want. Later, I sat on the porch watching the sky fade from burnt orange to navy. The unopened letter sat in my lap again. I ran my fingers over the seal. Still not yet, but soon. The lawyer's meeting was in 2 days, and no matter what happened, I needed to walk into that room with more than silence. The room smelled like polished wood and old papers. The lawyer's office was dimly lit, one long table, a pitcher of water, and too many chairs. I chose one near the corner. Not because I was hiding, because I was watching. My stepsister sat directly across from me, flanked by 2 aunts and an uncle who never called me by name. She wore a deep blue blazer, confident, prepared. I wore the same coat from the hospital. I didn't need to look like I belonged. I needed to feel like I still remembered why I came. The lawyer, Mr. Halverson, cleared his throat and adjusted his glasses. "We'll begin with a reading of your father's instructions," he said. No one moved. Even the air felt still. He opened a file folder slowly. Pages shifted. My chest did too. To my daughter, Caroline, he began. The room collectively leaned forward. Even I did. You've been a steady presence, responsible, loyal. The home stands with you. She smiled. A small, smug thing, not cruel, just certain. She had reason to be. Dad had always treated her like the polished version of the family. I was the fading sketch in the corner of the page. To my stepdaughter. There was a pause, just long enough for my name to feel fragile again. You will find something waiting in the envelope addressed to you. Heads turned, even hers. An envelope. No mention of money, no instructions, no sentimental words. Just an envelope. Mr. Halverson looked up, then reached into the folder again. This was sealed separately. Your father requested it be given directly. He stood, walked toward me, and placed a thin white envelope in front of me. It had my full name, middle name included, in his handwriting. I didn't move to open it. I just stared, because for the first time, everyone was staring at me. The envelope felt heavier than it should have, not in weight, but in consequence. I turned it over slowly, twice. Felt the edges with my fingers, like maybe I could sense its contents without ever opening it. But the room was too quiet, too focused, so I slipped my finger under the flap and peeled it open. Inside was a single folded sheet of thick paper, no check, no title deed, just my father's handwriting, the same slanted script he used when signing permission slips I was always too afraid to ask for. I unfolded it and read. I don't know if this will fix anything, or if it ever could. But I saw the look in your eyes when you left, and I carried it with me longer than I want to admit. I blinked, not because I was crying, but because the letters blurred anyway. I gave Caroline the house because she asked. She always asked. You never did. You just waited to be chosen, and I didn't know how to reach someone who kept walking away before I could speak. The corners of the paper curled slightly in my trembling hands. So, here it is. One last ask, inside the desk drawer top, right, take what's yours. And if you ever forgive me, tell your mother I still remember the green dress. I stopped breathing for a second. The green dress. Mom wore it the day they met. I remembered it only through photos and one short story she told me when I was sick. A story I thought only belonged to me. I looked up. No one was speaking. My stepsister was watching me, arms crossed, guarded. I folded the letter again, slid it back into the envelope, and placed it in my lap like something sacred. I waited until the room emptied, until the casseroles were covered, until the final condolences were murmured, until my stepsister had driven away, a little faster than usual. Then I walked back inside. The study hadn't changed. Same old desk, same dusty lamp, same photograph of him and Caroline at her college graduation, smiling in a way I never quite earned. I stood in front of the desk for a moment, then pulled open the top right drawer. At first, it looked empty. Just pens, loose paper clips, a dried-out highlighter. But beneath the tray, there was a small compartment I didn't remember. I reached in and found a velvet pouch inside, a ring, a folded photo, and a key. I sat down slowly. The ring was delicate, silver, etched with vines, my mother's favourite pattern. Not flashy, just familiar. The photo was even more surprising. It was me, age 10, at a science fair, holding a second-place ribbon like it was gold. He had taken that picture, and he'd kept it. The key I didn't recognise, but something in me knew. It didn't belong to the house. It belonged to something only he and I shared. A storage box? A locker? A journal? I didn't know, but I didn't cry. Not this time. I simply placed all 3 items back into the pouch, tied the strings, and held it against my chest, because for the first time in a long time, He hadn't given me what I wanted. He gave me what I needed. Proof that I was seen, even in silence. Caroline showed up the next morning, unannounced, as usual, a box of her things in her arms, probably the ones she didn't want movers to break. She barely looked at me as she passed the living room. "I'm just grabbing the last of it," she said, voice clipped. "I didn't think you'd still be here." "I live here now," I said quietly. She stopped, box still in her hands. "Excuse me." I didn't move, didn't raise my voice, didn't explain. "I'm not fighting you for anything," I continued. "I just found something he left for me." She laughed, not cruelly, just defensive. "What? Like a key to your own personal mystery box?" I said nothing, just held up the velvet pouch, her eyes flicked to it, paused, then narrowed. "I was the one who stayed," she said, more to herself than to me. "I helped him through the surgery. I signed every form. You showed up when it was convenient. And yet," I said, "he left this for me." That landed, not like a slap, more like a mirror. She set the box down on the table too hard, a corner dented. "You were always the ghost," she muttered, "always fading in and out. You didn't even say goodbye." "You never let me," I said. Silence, real silence, not the kind we grew up with, but the kind that follows truth. She picked up the box again, lighter now, somehow. I didn't stop her, didn't try to fix anything. She walked to the door, opened it halfway, then turned back once. "He kept that stupid science fair photo in his drawer," she said. "I thought it was weird. He never even put up your graduation picture." My breath caught. She noticed, smirked just a little, then left. That afternoon, I sat at the kitchen table, the same one Dad had his morning coffee at for 30 years, and pulled out a blank sheet of paper. Not for him, not for Caroline, not even for Mom. This one was for me. I didn't light a candle, didn't play sad music, didn't stage anything poetic. Just me, a pen, and the velvet pouch beside my elbow. I stared at the paper for a long time. Then I wrote, "Dear girl who always waited to be picked, he saw you, even when he didn't say it, even when he didn't know how." I paused, not because I was stuck, but because I finally wasn't. You don't have to earn your place by staying quiet. You don't have to become invisible to feel safe. You are not a leftover. You are not the echo of someone else's choice. The words weren't perfect. They didn't need to be. This wasn't a performance. This was permission. I folded the letter once, then again. Slipped it into the same drawer I found Dad's, right behind the science fair photo I had quietly placed next to his. Two truths, side by side. Then I stood up, tied the pouch shut, and placed it in my coat pocket. Not to hide it, but to carry it with me, like something earned. Not gifted. The key had no tag, no label, no hint. But I remembered one thing. Dad used to keep an old storage unit across town. Said it was for backup things. We all assumed it was junk. I found the address on a folded utility bill in his filing cabinet. It was still active. The manager raised an eyebrow when I handed over the key, but said nothing as he led me to Unit 17B. It wasn't big. Metal walls, dust in every corner. The kind of place that smelled like forgotten summers and dried-out glue. Inside, stacked neatly in the centre, one medium-sized wooden box, a stack of old notebooks, and a framed photo I hadn't seen in over 15 years. I knelt down and opened the box first. On top, a note in his handwriting. "You were never second." That's all it said. Beneath it, my first storybook, the one I wrote in 3rd grade about a girl who could turn invisible. A lock of my hair from kindergarten, labelled with the date. A concert ticket from the time we both got soaked in the rain because he forgot an umbrella. A letter unopened, from Mom, addressed to him. I held each item like it would vanish if I breathed too hard. This wasn't wealth, wasn't inheritance. It was evidence of presence, of quiet love, of everything he didn't know how to say in front of Caroline, or maybe even himself. I picked up the letter from Mom, didn't open it, didn't need to. It had been enough just to know it existed, that she tried. I stood there for a few more minutes, then locked everything back in the box, except the note, that I folded gently, placed in my coat pocket, beside the pouch. Now I had two things, something he gave me, and something he meant. I didn't slam any doors, didn't leave a note, didn't pack with purpose. I just gathered what mattered, the velvet pouch, the folded letter, the science fair photo, and the smallest thing of all, the note from the storage box. You were never second. It stayed in my hand as I walked through the house one last time. The living room still smelled like the eucalyptus candle Dad lit when he had company. The hallway mirror still had a chip from the time I knocked it over, trying on prom dresses. Even the coat hook by the front door still bent slightly. From a backpack I carried like it held the world. This place, it had held me, but never truly been mine. And now, I didn't need it to be. I made one stop before I left. Dad's study. I opened the drawer again, the one with my letter to myself. I reread the final line. You are not the echo of someone else's choice. I smiled, not wide, not triumphant, just sure. Then I placed his note next to mine. Two truths, side by side again. This time, by choice. As I turned to leave, I saw something small in the corner of the room, a tiny origami bird. I didn't remember making it. But I'd made hundreds as a kid. Left them in books, drawers, windowsills. He must have saved one. I didn't take it. Didn't need to. It was enough to know that something of me remained here, even if I didn't. I walked out, closed the door quietly, and this time it didn't feel like leaving something behind. It felt like bringing something forward. As I walked down the driveway, the wind picked up, soft, not cold, just moving things along. That's when it came back. Not a dramatic flashback, not a dream. Just a moment, one I'd buried deep. It was a Wednesday afternoon, 5th grade. I had just come home crying. Some boy in class called me invisible. I stormed into my room, slammed the door, and tore up the story I'd written. For the school contest, Dad knocked once, then let himself in. He didn't say much, didn't ask why. He sat beside me on the carpet, picked up the ripped pages, and started folding. One corner, then another, and another, until the story became a paper bird. Now it flies, he said, even if no one read it. I didn't get it back then. I just rolled my eyes. But that night, I found the bird perched on my lamp, waiting, like it believed in me when I didn't. I hadn't thought of it in years, not until I saw that same fold, that same quiet intention, sitting in the corner of his study. It wasn't about property or fairness or even legacy. It was always about knowing that I wasn't invisible, that somewhere in the quiet he was folding the pieces of me into something that could carry its own weight, even when I thought it was trash. I paused at the edge of the yard, turned around one last time. The house looked different, not because it had changed, but because I had. I smiled, not at the house, at the girl walking away from it. She was no longer waiting to be seen. 2 days later, I got a text from Caroline, just a photo, no caption. It was a picture of her windowsill. On it sat an origami bird, mine. From years ago, I had made dozens and left them everywhere. This one was pale green, folded just a little crooked. The way mine always were before I got better at creasing the corners. I stared at it, not because it shocked me, but because I had forgotten that even back then Caroline was watching, not always kindly, not always gently, but watching. A second text came 5 minutes later. I didn't throw all of it away. Thought you should know. That was it. No apology, no explanation, no elaborate olive branch. Just a sentence and a folded memory. I didn't respond right away, didn't know if I needed to. Instead, I walked over to my own windowsill, opened the velvet pouch again. Inside, I had tucked the little note Dad left me, and next to it, the pale blue bird I found in his study. Now, I placed the two side by side, one from him, one from her, neither perfect, both a kind of language, a bridge I didn't know I still wanted. Caroline might never say the words, but maybe that was okay, because this time, I didn't need her to understand me fully. It was enough that she didn't erase me. I didn't expect the memory to come back while folding laundry, but grief is tricky like that. It doesn't always arrive with thunder. Sometimes it sneaks in with the smell of warm cotton. I pulled a faded sweatshirt from the basket, navy blue, too big. Dad's. That's when it came rushing in. I was 16. Another fight with Caroline. She said I didn't speak up for myself enough. Said I was just background noise. I ran to the garage, furious. Sat on the concrete floor like I could freeze her words away. Dad found me there, didn't ask what happened. Just sat down beside me and handed me an old wrench. Sometimes silence is louder than yelling, he said. You don't have to shout to take up space. I remember brushing it off, thinking he was just avoiding the real problem. But now, years later, with his sweatshirt in my lap and a folded origami bird by my side, I finally heard what he meant. He wasn't saying to disappear. He was telling me I already had presence, even if I didn't use it the way others wanted. You never needed to be louder, just honest. That line, he had said it before. I remembered now. He said it when I was 8, crying over a group project where no one listened to my idea. He said it again at my high school graduation, when I gave a speech barely above a whisper, and again, silently, in every little way, he saved pieces of me without demanding I change who I was. It wasn't that he didn't see me, it's that he saw the version of me that didn't need to perform. And for the first time, that memory didn't hurt. It hummed, like the echo of something that had been waiting patiently to be understood. I saw her again that evening, not at my place, not planned, just at the cemetery. We had both come alone. She stood on the opposite side of the grave, holding nothing but herself, no flowers, no umbrella, just a stillness I hadn't seen in her before. I didn't speak. Instead, I reached into my coat pocket, pulled out the photo, the one from the science fair, the only one Dad kept that had just me in it. I had found it in the storage unit, thought about keeping it, but now I walked over, held it out. She looked down, surprised. No questions, no snide remark, no guilt-tripped apology, just a blink. And then her hand opened slowly. I placed the photo in her palm and nodded once. It wasn't a gift, it wasn't a challenge, it was an acknowledgement. She looked at the photo for a long time, then slipped it into her jacket, like it was fragile, and when she looked back up, her eyes didn't plead. They softened, not wide open, just not guarded, like the way you look at someone you finally see clearly, but don't yet have the words for. We didn't hug, didn't promise anything, but as we stood there side by side, in the quiet winter wind, something between us loosened, not fully mended, not rewritten, just allowed, like a door that creaked open an inch, enough to say, I don't hate you, I'm just tired of carrying what never belonged to me. The next morning, I returned to the storage unit, Not to search, not to uncover, just to leave something behind. I brought a small wooden box. Inside, the letter I wrote to myself. One origami bird, a copy of the science fair photo, and the velvet pouch. Now empty, I didn't write a note. Didn't lock the box. Just placed it gently on the shelf where I found Dad's things. As I turned to leave, something slipped from the corner of a cabinet. A small card, face down. I crouched and flipped it over. It was from a Father's Day, long ago, my handwriting uneven, hopeful, still trying too hard. To the dad who sees me even when I'm quiet. Love your little project girl. I hadn't remembered writing that, but I knew exactly what I meant when I did. Dad had once called me his little project girl. Not because I needed fixing, but because I was always building, folding, trying to turn scraps into something worth keeping. I smiled, tucked the card into the box, closed the lid. As I stepped out of the unit, the motion light above flickered on. A soft click. Then stillness. Not eerie, not dramatic, just a whisper of presence. Like something saying, "That's enough." Not closure, just peace. I didn't call Caroline again. Didn't follow up, didn't wait for hers either. I just moved, not away, but forward. The house no longer felt like a battlefield. It felt like a chapter. And chapters end. Sometimes they don't end neatly. They don't wrap with apologies or confessions or cinematic reunions. Sometimes they end quietly, with a door closing gently, with a box left behind. I didn't need her to be sorry. I didn't need the will to be fair. I just needed to stop asking why I wasn't chosen, because maybe being chosen was never about someone else's decision. Maybe it's what we do with what's left. The scraps, the folds, the silence. I took one final walk by the pond near Dad's old shed. The willow tree had overgrown the fence. The bench we built together was still standing, crooked, uneven, but solid. I sat for a while, not to remember, to rest, to thank the girl who stayed quiet for so long, and the woman who finally heard her. And maybe that's enough. Now I wonder, what would you do if the apology never came, but the door quietly opened anyway? Would you walk in or walk on?